Black Dwarf is dropping in just 10 days, but is she worth pulling for? Welcome back to Cocky Gachas, and in this video, finally, we're going to discuss Black Dwarf because, as you guys know, right, Black Dwarf banner has been accelerated swap with the Shaman banner, so Black Dwarf is dropping in 10 days instead of Shaman. So in this video, let's just discuss whether you should pull for Black Dwarf, and I'm going to give you guys some reasons why you should pull and why you shouldn't, some of the considerations. Of course, at the end of the day, you have to make the decision for yourself. And first up on the screen, you can see this is premium website. The name is Kaalaa Baunaa. It's similar to how Changlik's name is Jessica. So for Black Dwarf, definitely this is a direct translation if I'm not wrong. Over here, it's mineral type and also a mental damage user. First skill over here is Enchanted Strike. This is a one target attack. You will deal 180%, 270%, 450% respectively. Upon casting, you will gain 1 stack, 2 stack, and 3 stacks of Saturn. And Saturn, right, what it does is that it will get a plus 6% penetration rate for each stack. At P0, right, your planets are capped at 3 planets. So you can imagine if you have 3 Saturns, or if you cast this Enchanted Strike 3 times, right, you're going to gain 3 of the planets. You're going to get 18% of penetration rate for your next attack. Sounds complicated, but honestly not that difficult. Next one we are going to talk about is going to be the mythical meteors. So one single attack, and then this one is a mass attack. Deals mental damage to 2 enemies, 135%, 200%, 335%. And now we can gain a different stack of planets, which is Mars. If we were to cast it at 1 star, we will get 1 stack of Mars, 2 stars, 2 stacks, and then 3 stars, 3 stacks. And this instead grants you Lich rate. So honestly, for a DPS standpoint, you can see that you would prioritize going for the Enchanted Strike over for Mythical Meteors because we gain penetration rate. Now moving on, we're going to have the ultimate Singular Perfection over here. As the name suggests, Singular Perfection means you only attack 1 target. Removes all of the planets, deal 600% mental damage, and gain 2 stacks of Full Moon. With Full Moon, right, you're going to have plus 6% Incantation Might. Skill power is Incantation Might for each stack, meaning you're going to get 12% Incantation Might until you replace all of the full moons. So effectively, right, you can think of it as 30% Incantation Might, because 2 moons, 12%, second attack, when you were to add 1 more of the planets, right, you are still having 2 moons. So another 12%. The third one is where you remove the moon, 1 of the moons, and then that's when you would get the 30% Incantation Might. So it might seem like very little, but later when I touch on the follow-up attacks, which comes with the Insight 3, you are going to notice that the damage is off the charts, right? 600% compared to other like Lilya, 700%, you might think very little, but later on you'll know what's up with Black Dwarf. So over here, with the Inheritance, with the Insight, when a planet is removed, you'll gain 1 stack of Saturn Divination, Mars Divination, or Full Moon Divination, depending on what you actually remove. So of course, right, if you were to replace the Saturn, so now let's say that you have 3 Saturns and you were to replace it, right, technically you just straight up lose penetration rate. So to compensate for that, whenever the planets get removed, you get double the effect. So meaning 6% remove, it gave you the 12% for 1 stack. Okay, so 12% penetration rate for 1 stack. Similarly for the Mars Divination, you get Lich rate. And then for Full Moon, instead of 6%, you would get 12% when you remove it for 1 stack. It does not last forever, so your next attack will just use it up. Just think of it like rousing morale. Now for the I2, you just gain crit rate 10%. Honestly, quite decent. Now moving on to the I3, this is also the highlight for Black Dwarf. The reason why her ultimate, despite being a 600% multiplier, is stronger than a lot of your typical carries in Lilya, etc. So the reason why is because when you cast your ultimate, right, based on how many planets are on you, how many planets get removed, right, you are going to gain additional effects. So if Saturn is your most removed planet, you are going to immediately cast Enchanted Strike. Similarly, if Mars is your most removed planet, you are going to cast the Mythical Meteors, which is the AoE attack. So the follow-up attack, right, adds on to the multiplier for the ultimate. You can think of it that way. So 600% plus the respective percentages for the ranks that you are going to remove. So very simple here, just to break it down, right? If you have 3 Saturns right now, you're going to cast rank 3 follow-up attack. If you have 2 Saturns, you're going to cast rank 2 follow-up attack. Similarly for Mars as well. And if you were to remove moons, right, instead of doing follow-up attacks, you are going to immediately gain spell incantation. In this case, it is empower incantation. Not sure why Pirin doesn't want to translate it the right way. Regardless, it's going to gain for 1 round, 2 rounds, if based on how many full moons you actually have when you cast the ultimate. You can also go up to 3 full moons if you have higher portraits, because then when you cast ultimate, instead of gaining 2 full moons, you're going to gain 3 full moons. But at P0, we're just talking about that, you can go up to 2 rounds, meaning this Empower Incantation, right, is basically like your Ununli, whereby it upgrades the cards. But because it's Empower Incantation 2, it upgrades 2 cards at the same time to the next rank for 1 turns and 2 turns based on how many full moons you remove. However, just to let you guys know, right, usually people just go for the follow-up attacks over having the full moons because really hard to get, especially at P0. Even if you can get it at higher portraits, not exactly the best anyways, right? Because it depends on how many cards you have. If you have lesser than 2 cards, then the effect is not going to be as good. So just focus on the follow-up attacks. This is also why the ultimate, right, despite being a 600% damage, is much stronger, like I mentioned, because you have the effects that you gain, right, when you remove planets with the I1. This is going to also calculate in with your ultimate, and also you are going to gain the follow-up attack, and this follow-up attack can also benefit from the 2 full moons that you actually gain. So very, very strong. This is why this whole kit, right, works so well together. Without I3, not that good, to be honest. Okay, moving on. Next, we are going to talk about the portraits, and a lot of people are under the impression that portrait 1 is extremely strong, and people are always going for portrait 1. But honestly, this is deceptively strong. P1 is actually not that much of an increase if you play her in a certain way by moving cards, which is the optimal play style. You're only gaining around 2% DPM, so I don't really know why people are like hyper emphasizing on P1s. From what I can see, right, BD portraits are in fact one of the worst. Total up to P5, you only get around 17% DPM increase. So this is the reason why I don't really think that you need to go for portraits at all. P0 is very, very strong, just like Jessica, just like Changling. She is a P0 god, especially for free-to-play players. Don't get baited. People might tell you, hey, Planet go to 4, super crazy, but honestly, it's not that good. And one reason I can also use to convince you is because if you think about it, right, if you have more planet slots, right, it means that the stage whereby you remove the planets, whereby you get 2 times the effect, is going to come later. So there is a con that comes with going to the planet slot up to 4, right, instead of just full boons when it comes to portrait. So definitely it is an increase in DPM, but it's not as high as what you guys think it is. Hopefully I made it clear enough. If you guys have any more questions, can go to my Discord channel. I'll try to explain to you guys. This is rather complicated, I understand, compared to other units. Now moving on, the next thing I want to touch on is about comparisons. After all, right, when you are talking about pool priority, you definitely want to compare one unit to another unit. So one unit that people always compare to for Black Dwarf is Eternity. If you have Eternity, do you need to pull for Black Dwarf? So over here you can see this is the charts. In fact, this does not just include Eternity, it also has the Lilya calculations over here for both the single target as well as AoE DPS. So for people that don't know Chinese, of course you might be seeing a lot of numbers, you don't know what it is, so I'm going to break it down for you guys. So first up, the first table on top right is about single target DPS. Okay, so that is why Lilya is also in here, because she's one of our comparison targets. The second unit is Eternity, and then the rest are all Black Dwarf. This is the full rotation for Black Dwarf from here to here. This is how much DPM they calculate it separately, because every time you change the moons, right, the planets, right, your damage is going to differ slightly. So you definitely have to calculate it quite precisely. That is how they calculate the DPM comparisons. For the rest of the units, it's quite straightforward. So over here, right, 100% being Lilya, because single target, right, we'll say that Lilya is one of the more like standard ones that we want to benchmark against. So Lilya would do 27,425 against single target, and over here Eternity only does 22,237 per rotation. Okay, so this is slightly worse than Lilya. Of course, only 80% DPS of Lilya. And when you look at Black Dwarf, you can see that there are two numbers over here, right? 31,944 and 30,532. You might ask why. So the reason why, right, is because for the lower number, it is going to assume that you start from turn 1, whereby you don't have existing moons on you. Do remember that once you cast moons, right, you instantly gain that 12% incantation might, which means that from the first rotation onwards, you will always have the second rotation numbers. Okay, so this is 32,000 and the first one is 30,000. Just compare it to Eternity, you can see, right, this number is almost 1.5 times. So from single target DPS standpoint, she is almost 1.5 times as strong as Eternity, and when compared to Lilya, she is 116%, so 1.16 times compared to Lilya based on this number. Of course, if you compare to a lower number, not as strong, but still stronger than Lilya. So stronger than both from a single target standpoint. Now we look at the AoE standpoint, which Black Dwarf is arguably weaker. So over here, same thing, this is Lilya, this is Eternity, and then the rest are all Black Dwarf. And for this two, right, the only difference is that the follow-up attack class, right, for this one is going to be based on Mars, and this one is going to be based on Saturn. So this is Enchanted Strike, and this is Mythical Meteors. So over here, you can see Lilya's rotation, right, over here it's higher because of two targets now. This is a two target test, 32,854 And for Eternity, of course, Eternity is stronger at AoE 35,725. However, if you were to compare the rotation against Black Dwarf, right, you can notice that the numbers here are of course still higher for Black Dwarf, which is why I say AoE or for single target, Black Dwarf is superior to Eternity. Although, one caveat over here, right, this is against 2 targets. If you have 3 targets, potentially Eternity might inch in closer to Black Dwarf on the first rotation. But regardless, right, most of the bosses I've seen or raids, right, is usually single target. So when you look at that, right, 1 unit, 2 unit, then the Eternity damage is definitely still lower from an AoE standpoint. For our Black Dwarf, it's 38,000 for first rotation without the moons. Second rotation onwards with the moons is 40,500. So over here, right, 120% compared to Lilya, but compared to Eternity, it is a smaller increase. I think it's 108% only increase. So these are the comparisons for you guys to make a better decision on whether you think that Eternity is good enough for you guys. Obviously for raids, right, 1.5 times damage on single target for Marsh raid is going to be quite significant. I think it's not even a fair comparison at that point. But of course for AoE, if you're not focused on raid that much, honestly not that significant increases. However, still more beneficial, like still superior compared to Eternity from that standpoint. So if you're not focused on raids, not as needed. Now moving on, we are going to do even more comparisons because honestly, just comparing against Eternity and Lilya is not enough. There are other characters that are equally strong for the role that Black Dwarf is definitely competing for, and that is first one, raids. So for raids itself, for Marsh creation, I already mentioned in the video about raids, right? If you guys haven't seen that, go check that out if you're interested in raids. Marsh creation raid really requires you to have a strong single target DPS as with most raids. However, there is an alternative in Melania. If you are really good at the game and you want to spend some time to play the raids itself, using Melania at P0, right, would be a good substitute for Black Dwarf. So one of the reasons why you might potentially want to skip on Black Dwarf is that you already have Melania and you're willing to spend time to get that triple S in raid. So you definitely have to spend a bit more time. But regardless, if you have Melania, that might be one of the reasons why you want to skip. So that is from a raid standpoint. They are similar. They can both achieve SSS rate, so definitely good thing to reference. Second thing is about general content. So if you are talking about general content, Black Dwarf is still good, right? Like you can see from the numbers comparison, compared to Eternity, her AoE capabilities are also strong and her single target prowess is really insane. So it's not just AoE that you need to be concerned with when it comes to the general content. In Limbo, in Lu2, a lot of stages still require you to have strong single target DPS, which is where Black Dwarf comes in. However, we recently also have a alternative in Jessica. Jessica Changling is a super strong general content clearer. She's not as good in raids like I mentioned multiple times, but she is really good at general content. So if you're only focused on general content, then you wouldn't really see the need to pull Black Dwarf in my opinion, because Jessica or Changling can already cover that. Of course, if you're looking for having 2 teams, right, you don't have any other hyper carries, Limbo needs you to have 2 teams, so Black Dwarf here can also come in. So depending on what your box look like I always say, it is subjective, but Changling is one of the main competing reasons. However, Limbo, you do need 2 hyper carries. So if you already have 2 hyper carries, one is Jessica, then maybe there is a less chance of you needing Black Dwarf to clear general content. But overall, I think that most people will pull Black Dwarf for the raid perspective. She is really superior in Marsh creation, and the last time that I mentioned, right, Marsh creation rate only happens one time in 1.4. However, I do have the news that 1.6 is also going to rerun Marsh creation. So 2 raids already with Marsh creation. Definitely you're going to want to have Black Dwarf if you want an easy, casual time of getting triple S. If you want to try hard a bit more, Melania can also fill in that role. Now at this point, I also want to mention one important comparison that a lot of people have been raising up to me, right? Talking about Qu-Niang. If you guys don't know what Qu-Niang is, other name, right? Some people call her Jiu or something like that, but in Chinese, it is Qu-Niang. So for Qu-Niang 1.6 limited character, she is coming, she is mineral type, she does compete with Black Dwarf, but how much? Is it really like people say she's 20% stronger than Black Dwarf based on this, based on that? I can tell you, people that are telling you about Qu-Niang right now, right? They are honestly just sprouting nonsense most of the time. Anyone that gives you a decision on whether you should pull for Qu-Niang as of this point, don't take them seriously. The multipliers for Qu-Niang are not out yet. Okay, we are going to expect it in probably 2 or 3 days, I believe. At this point, no one knows anything about Qu-Niang except for the live stream that people are taking the numbers, pulling up without reference to side cubes, without reference to portraits. Anything like that is all out in the air, right? They are just drawing castles in the sky. So please do not take them seriously. However, at the same time, this is a fair point to say that potentially Triniang might be stronger than Black Dwarf. But I don't think that she will be power creeped by that much, even if that is the case. But like I said many times, guys, freaking 1.6 is so far away, 120 days away, okay? Why are you guys worrying about power creep when Black Dwarf is coming in just under 10 days and you're worrying something that is coming in 120 plus days? So is this a fair point to make? Sure, but is it something that you should worry about? I don't think so. If you need Black Dwarf now, pull Black Dwarf now. Raids happen in 1.4, okay? It is not going to happen until you get Triniang. So if you're really pulling her, right, mainly it's for the raid aspect, you are going to waste your time. You are going to spend time fretting about whether Triniang is going to power creep BD, and when rates are already dropping in 1.4. So that is a moot point in my opinion. Really don't care that much. And lastly, one important thing, right? In fact, I would say it's the most important thing, is that whether you have the amount of pool currency to really go for Black Dwarf. This really determines whether you pull or skip. After all, right, all the good talk about Black Dwarf, all the good talk about 37, all of these units, right, useless if you don't have enough pools to go for them, and also going for high priority units like 6. So I would say that 6 out of 1.4 patch is the most important one from now until 1.4. So definitely if you already have enough for 6, then you can consider other options, be it 37, be it Black Dwarf. And also, right, quite important to take note is that the average amount, right, of course, when we talk about pool currency, we talk a bit about statistics. I know gacha games are about RNG, our sample size is not high enough, but the average over here, spreadsheet over here, this is 63 or 64 pools on average to hit a banner unit. Hence, if you think about it from that logic, right, you can account for it. You wouldn't lose 50-50 so many times, honestly. If you really lose 50-50 all the time, your face is black. No one can save you anyways, right? You can say you want to save for 6, but by the time 6 comes, you only have 100 and maybe 20 pools. And then you need 140 pools. What can you do? Suck thumb, because your luck is just not good. So who cares about that? Average is 64 pools. So plan accordingly with this in mind. Hopefully you get lucky, hopefully you can get your Black Dwarf. This is all the points I have right now to help you guys make the decision on whether you should pull or skip for upcoming Black Dwarf. Now, of course, with the arrival of 1.3, there are a lot of events that are coming. So if you want to take a look on my opinions on some of it and give you guys a preview on the things that are upcoming in 1.3, definitely check out this video. I'll see you guys over there. This is Cocky Gachas, signing off.